So the purpose of today's session is to create awareness about the Nova Scotia Inclusive Education Policy, Students First, and to connect us as mothers and guardians to share our experiences with inclusive education and the available supports. And so the question that is guiding our session today, if you notice on our poster, the question is, do you know about the Nova Scotia Inclusive Education Policy? So that is the question that will be answered for us today. We have 3 speakers from the Department of Education and Early Childhood Development who will guide us through the Student First policy and through the English and French as an additional language strategy. We also have Monica Romero, and Monica Romero is a mother who will be speaking about her experiences navigating multiple systems as she raises her son. Monica is a scientist by training. At the moment, she is a stay-at-home mom raising her child, but she also does a volunteer work with the library, the Halifax Regional Library. So we will begin this morning with Monica. And then we will move to the presentation from the Department of Education and Early Childhood. So I am so pleased to welcome Monica. We will also have a reflection after the speakers so that we can chat about any questions that we might have. But we will also have the opportunity to ask questions after each speaker. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Monica, who has been in Halifax since 2009, and she came from Mexico. Well, she came from other parts of the world as well, but she's been moving around.
So but I'm originally from Mexico. Yeah. So first language Spanish. Yes.
Yes. So thank you, Monica. Please.
Thank you so much for your introduction and for inviting me to today's Inclusive Education Forum 2021. It's usually hard to be the first speaker because, and I hope that everybody has their coffee and breakfast and ready to start this session. So my name is Monica Romero, and I am raising a child. He is 10 years old at the moment, and he is a special needs child. He has learning exceptional abilities and a disability. He has 2 different conditions. He was diagnosed with ADHD, and he also has a medical condition for which one he has surgeries every 2 months. So I'm going to be speaking about our experience as a family, and mainly our experience navigating the school system. So let me just take you a little bit back to our background. And my son was born in 2010. He came to this world premature. He is what is categorized as extremely premature baby. So he was born in the IWK in the Children's Hospital, and he was followed up by the IWK for 3 years. Before he was born, I have no idea. We were just new here in Halifax. We did not have a big network of support. I did not know anything about daycares. I did not know anything about special needs, anything regarding support. I was working at the time, but I took a maternity leave license to stay with him after he was discharged from the hospital, up to 2 years. After that, I wanted to return back to work, and I was looking for daycares. Now, a lot of our circumstances and the choices of daycares and school have been very circumstantial, let me tell you that. And I think there was a lot of luck on that as well. So we found WeCare. WeCare is a daycare this is a center that is specialized in taking children with special needs and exceptionalities and disabilities. And I want to say that we were very lucky, because I do not know how many centers like these ones exist in Halifax, but this one, it just happened to be across the place of work of my husband. And I know that at that time, this center had a long waiting list. But like I said, luck is again a factor in our situation, where we found a spot for him. So we start our education story at daycare. So daycare for, how many people do you know about WeCare? The daycare WeCare. If I know one of the persons here, she had her son in WeCare. Anybody else? No? Okay.
Yes,
so
me. My sons were there.
Yes, yeah, I know Monica personally. So WeCare is a center that specializes in has infrastructure to carry for children with physical disabilities, intellectual disabilities, emotional, and some other kinds of support on that. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because they have a resource teacher. And this person was key for us, because at that time, my son did not have a diagnosis. He was presented with developmental delays per areas. It was not global developmental delay, but it was presented by areas where emotional and motor skills and emotional delays were present at the time, and it was recognized by the center. And so my son stayed at WeCare for 3 years. And during that time, he worked, or the resource teacher worked very closely with him. And close to the time when he was about to attend big school, the resource teacher talked to us, and she said, there is support for you for the transition daycare to big school. I didn't know that at the time. So she kindly let us know that at the time, what is called today the Early Intervention Center, it was called the Progress Center at the time. And she said, you can refer yourself to the center, and they're going to provide you with support to transition your child with special needs from daycare to big school. Now, big school I call elementary school. So at the time, we self-refer ourselves. I talked to an intake coordinator, and I fill a form. I register my son with them. And as usual, there was a bit of a waiting time. So we waited 1 year to be admitted. And at the year, we were assigned an early interventionist that worked with my son for 1 full year. And that was, it was very well timely, because my son was 4 years old at the time. And what she was doing with my son was working on his transition, and it was working on skills that he will need, because he was coming from daycare, small group, less structure, I want to say less structure than big school. So she came to our home for 1 full year. He came to our home sessions, and she will work with my son. I also want to mention that my son was delayed in speech. So she will work with the speech skills, and she will work with emotional, problem solving, and social interactions with my son. And another good thing that she did for us was that close to the time that my son was about to start school, she set a meeting for us with the school, with the principal, with the teachers, and with the learning center teacher. So in some schools, probably majority of schools in the HRM, the schools have what is called the learning center teacher or the resource teacher. This is a very important person if you have a special needs child or a child with exceptionalities, because she's going to be the person working very closely with your child. So the early interventionist set a meeting for our family and the school. And even though we did not have a diagnosis at the time, the challenges were discussed and a plan was put in place. I just want to say this is very, very important. Very, very important, because this is what is going to determine if your child needs an EPA, which is an educational professional assistant, that is the time for you to request it. The schools have budgets, and in that budget, they must include how many EPAs they will need. So having the meeting before your child starts school is super critical, because if your child needs one-on-one support from an EPA, that's the time when you want to request it. So Jenna, the early interventionist, completed work with my son. The name of my son is Nico, by the way. He's Nicolas, we call him Nico, he likes Nico. So Jenna stopped working with Nico exactly at the time when Nico started big school. From that time, all the services that he needs are provided by the school. The Progress Center or the Early Intervention Center, how they call it now, stop services. At that time, they stop the services right at the time when the children start school. I am not familiar, and I believe that an early intervention center person will come and speak to the mothers. Maria, is that going to happen in further sessions?
So could you repeat the question, please, Monica?
Yeah, sure. And I'm just trying to say, how does that work with the early intervention center? Yeah. But I wonder if you have a speaker from that place.
We are trying to get our speaker from the place. Yes, we are in the process. We hope to have them in June, the session in June.
Correct. Okay. Mm-hmm. So as a little bit of information, the early intervention center works with children, and not very familiar what happened right now, but at the time when my child was working with them, they used to get children before the age of 5 or before they started big school, because it's precisely what the name of the center is called, early intervention. They work with children as early as possible, whether they have a diagnosis or not. Probably you are working to have a diagnosis for your child and his age 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, but they will work with you if they deem that from your registration and your interview, they deem that you need the support, but they will only do it up to the school age. So Jenna stopped working with Nico at the time when he started school, and then from that time on, he had a plan. He had an EPA, and his teacher, she was aware of his needs. What I want to say is that working with the teacher, your first point of contact should be the teacher at all points, because the teacher is the person who will know your son. After yourself, the mother knows best, but after that is the teacher. It's usually the teacher. So if you feel that your child needs support, if he doesn't have a diagnosis yet, but you feel like there are things that you don't think these things are like the normal, I would say the normal, like you feel your child needs support, or he's presenting behaviors that are not the usual, the teacher is the first person that you should approach to. Because what I want to say is, when my child received the diagnosis for ADHD, the teacher was the person who told me about how he was interacting and how he was behaving at school. And he said, she said to us, that she definitely feel that we should go for the diagnosis. And so we approached IWK again, we talked to the pediatrician, we filled the forms as parents, and the teacher filled the forms as well. So there are some forms that are filled by the school. This is the teacher and the resource center. And there are some forms that will be sent to you, to the family. I'm talking about the ADHD diagnosis. My son also, before the school, he went for the autism assessment, because there was a suspicion that he might be in the spectrum. And so at that time, the one who helped us was the resource teacher from the daycare. And some forms were filled by us, and then we went through the assessment. So coming back to the school, so the teacher was the one who helped us with the diagnosis. So these two people, the teacher and the learning center teacher, were keys for us in getting the diagnosis. Then my son also had used the services of the board. Well, at the time it was called the board. Now it's called the Center for Education, where Peru comes from. It's Can you remind me the acronyms of the place?
Are you talking
HRCE?
HRCE.
Halifax Regional Centre for Education.
Yes, correct. Yeah. Yes. So my son has been using the services from the center, the education. At some point, we needed the support from the physiotherapist. Then he also worked with an occupational therapist for his ADHD. Then he also used the services of the psychologist for an educational assessment that he has been needing all this time for different assessments for the ADHD. And then he's in the wait list for autism then again, because there is a suspicion that he might be on the spectrum, but at the time was not caught when he was 3 years old. So now he's waiting for another assessment. Yes, I see your face. Yes, he's currently waiting for another assessment. And so this educational assessment is something that they usually ask you for. So this assessment was completed by a psychologist from the center. He is working with a speech therapist from day one, because his medical condition affects his vocal cords, and he has been progressively losing his voice. So yes, so he's able to speak, but he has very bad quality of voice, and the volume of his voice is very low. So we have been using the speech therapist services. And a most recent thing where the school has been great help of the student services from the center is that he was deemed he needed to use technology to communicate with the teachers and communicate with his peers, because the volume of his voice sometimes is very low, and sometimes after surgeries he loses his voice. So the school has helped him to find technology. It's called assistive technology. But at the time they thought he could use the iPads that the autistic children were using. The children with autism, they use iPads provided by the schools, where they highlight in the iPads, they indicate in the iPads what they require, what they need to communicate. But for Nico, after working with the speech therapist and the teacher and ourselves, we decided that it was better for him to use a voice amplification system. So we went for the voice amplification system that the school purchased for him. So the school bought this device for him. And they bought one device, and it's only for his own use. And now with the COVID-19 situation, right, they are more like finicky with the cleanliness. So they bought a device for himself, right? And he's working with the learning center teacher and with his teacher to use it, because my son also presents with anxiety. And so there had to be another plan has to be work around this situation. And so he's now working in his classroom using his voice technology. So I just want to say at this point that it has been challenging to find how to help a child in his needs. But working with the school, the teachers, the center, it has been transcendental for us. Because, like I said at the beginning, being a woman, being a mother immigrant to this country, I did not went to the school here. I did not know, I have very little knowledge of the school system here. I had very little knowledge of the support systems in Halifax. So it was for us critical to work with resource teachers, with the people from the Progress Center at the time, which is now called the Early Intervention Center. And it was very, very important for us to have a very close working relationship with the school. And I want to say that at this point, my son, he's a happy child. He loves going to school. And I think that part of that is because he feels that that his needs are recognized, that he's well supported by his teachers. Mm-hmm. He goes to a very good school. School is very important. The choice of a school is very, very important if you have a child with special needs, because that's going to determine how happy you feel with your children's situation, and how elementary school are the formative years for children, emotional, intellectual. So having the right place where he attends and that he finds himself content and happy, disregarding or in spite of his challenges, it's very, very important for his formative years, I would say. So my situation, I know that everybody has a different situation, but this has been our experience. And I would say there was a little bit of luck. There was a lot of hard work, working with different people in different places. But so far, so good. I know we are halfway there, because in 2022, he's going to start junior high. So there is another challenge to start. So at the moment, what we're doing ourselves and with the help of the teachers, we're trying to identify the school, junior high school. And our plan is to, as early as possible, to contact the resource person in junior high. And also, and as we did with elementary school, to try and set up a plan for Nico. So this has been my story. One story in a million of stories in here. If you have any questions, any comments, I would like to, if you can speak, if you can let us know.
Monica,
yes,
I just
Halvan.
wanted to really appreciate the story that you shared with us. Just help us to reflect and to be more focused on our children, because we are here. It's a new country, new culture, and so everyone needs his time to be part of the environment. It's a bit hard, but it's not impossible. So every one of us can find our techniques or strategies to be part of this culture. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Really appreciate.
Thanks for your word. Yeah, and I can relate. I can relate to your experience.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Monica. Really, your story really captures the many different pieces that the school system does, you know, in terms of responding to a child who has a learning exceptionality and many other different issues that go along with that learning exceptionality. And I just want to really thank you for your openness and your willingness to share your struggle with us, because it's really, it really speaks to many of us that have gone through the system already and encountered different and difficult situations. And it's good to know, to hear other experiences, and to know that you're not alone, and to know that the system, that you're able as a parent, as an immigrant parent, to navigate the system. And I think offering this forum is an opportunity for us to speak out, right, and to learn from one another. And I really thank you for being open.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, the more people, I'm open because it's by speaking that other people learn about, you know, well, I'm not the only one. That's number one. You might think that because you are in a new country, sometimes you have a feeling of being very isolated. You know, it's because of language, it's because you do not know the system. But it's by listening the experiences of other people that has gone through the same that you're going through, that you get this encouragement and this what can I say, this hope, you know, that it's possible. It's possible. You can do it, and the support is right there. And I'm so glad that this forum exists to let everybody know who can support you, where are those places, and what can you do, and that there are other mothers like you, or parents. I don't want to be, maybe there is a parent here, a father here, right, and that you can approach for help. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so